Okay.
Hi, it's my great pleasure to be here today with Jean Gibson. Jean is a powerhouse. She's a life coach for children and for adults, and she's just written an amazing book about ADHD. It's called the ADHD Support Handbook, and it's a real testament to Jean as a coach. Thank you, Jean. It looks great. It's written from knowledge. It's written using Jean's lovely clarity and an incredibly calm passion. And it comes from a place of passion. I know it means a lot to you and your family, Jean. So what was it that got you involved in the subject of ADHD?
It's a really interesting one because when I first heard the word ADHD, I had never heard it before. I had no idea what it was. But it came from talking to my daughter, and we talked a lot. But in particular, we were talking about her son, my grandson. And, you know, we talked over a number of months about how he was getting on at school or how he was struggling at nursery. And she told me about the assessment that he had, and she told me about the diagnosis that he had. And that was my first hearing, my first awareness of a condition called ADHD. And then it kind of took off from there, trying to support her. So that's where my first inclination came from, my first understanding of it and the subject matter.
Yeah, it's quite a scary label, isn't it? There's an awful lot of preconceptions. So why did you write the book? What drove you to writing the book?
It's really interesting because as I began to understand more about the condition, because my daughter has dyslexia, and when I asked her for the information, so she told me about the condition, she told me about the struggle she was having, and I said to her, well, give me all the paperwork that you've got, that you've been given, and let me see what I can do. I wasn't expecting this bundle of paperwork, you know. She gave me this bundle of paperwork, and it's like, wow. And I think before I even opened it, I was just in awe of the fact that she has dyslexia and she'd been going through and dealing with this on her own. And the more people that I talked to about it, so as I started to read through the paperwork to understand what was going on for my grandson, and then as I started to do a bit more research and, you know, Google what words meant and what was going on, the more people that I talked to, I kind of realised the impact that this condition was having on the parent and the child and the people around them. And I kind of just realised that the story was the same whoever I spoke to, no matter how old the individual that had the condition, but the challenges were also the same. And what I found at the time that I started to do my research in terms of understanding for myself so that I could support my daughter was that it was difficult to find information, or there was just so much information, you just were overwhelmed by everything. And so my thinking was, if I can pull together all the kind of information that's needed to give you, when you first hear about the diagnosis and you're not sure what to do, where to go, if I had a resource that gave somebody that information, that basic level of information, that would have been useful for us. And so that was the purpose behind the book.
What was it that affected you, that impacted you so deeply that you felt that you needed to support others struggling in the same way? Because that's a big drive, you know. It's one thing understanding it for yourself, but it's another thing being driven to share that with others.
Yeah, I think it was when my daughter told me about what she was going through and how it impacted her. It broke my heart. And it broke my heart to the point where, you know, she'd been doing it on her own for however long that she was trying to deal with it, and it broke my heart. And we talked, and then, as I said to you, I started to talk to various different people and understood that she was lucky she had me to support her and that I was able to support her. But we also talked about others and other parents that were going through the same thing, the same challenges, the same struggles that she was facing. And I think both of us together felt that, you know, if we could do something to help others, there'd be some real value in that. And also, and I suppose an ulterior motive was also is that it gave her a community, because if we could find other people going through something similar, it was actually also going to give her other people that understood what she was going through. And that's where the desire to help others and to find others in a similar situation came from.
It's so powerful to have others who understand you as
Yeah.
part of the community, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And you know, it just makes you stop. It helps with that feeling of isolation and that self-criticism.
Yeah.
You set up an online support group to give information freely. What was the driver behind that? Was it the same thing or something
Yeah,
different?
well, I think it's similar. The initial support group setting up was about finding others that were going through a similar thing. So developing a community, and that was about, again, finding a community for my daughter so that she had others that she could talk to and share her challenges with and get support and advice from. But then I started to look wider online, and I think the more research I did, I started seeing other support groups popping up. And some of the support groups that are there, they're fantastic. All of the support groups are great. They all serve a purpose. Some are a place for people just to offload the challenges that they're going through. Some where they share their experiences. You can ask questions. I really kind of just wanted to provide a place where people could get the information they needed without worrying about the cost implications. I don't know, maybe it's just something inherent in me, but also thinking about, you know, my daughter's position and others who are in a similar position where you don't always have the money to buy things. You don't always have, you're not always able to buy a book on Amazon. You only want to ask a question, or you just need a little bit of information. So having a free resource, and actually I had the time also to do this. So in a way, I suppose I felt that I'm doing it for my daughter, but it takes nothing away from me to give that information openly to others as well. So that's why I do it freely. The group that is on Facebook, the Facebook group, the ADHD Revolution, it's what they call a tribe. It's a community of people, and the aim is for, you know, the ultimate aim for me is to change the way that people think about ADHD. You know, typically ADHD is seen as a kind of a naughty boy syndrome. You know, that's how people understood in the very early days. That's how what they thought ADHD was about. It was about boys who were naughty and needed discipline. But with more research that's been done now, I think people now, you know, understand the condition in a bit more depth. But that's why I give the information freely, so that it's open to everybody. They can ask questions if they choose to. The group primarily, I know they consume a lot of the information that I put out there. Don't ask very many questions. Don't necessarily engage with each other. But the resource, I know, is valuable, because all of the posts that I put out, all of the information, whether it's a link to a website, whether it's a presentation that I've attended, it might just be more information that I've learned. It could be somebody else's story, perhaps they've given permission to share. Whatever the information is, I know that the members in that group are using that information. They're consuming that information. So I know it's useful. But also I get emails from people, so they may not interact in the group, but they'll email me separately and say, yes, that was really useful, thank you so much, you know, you're doing a great job, keep doing what you're doing. So I know that it's a value. And by having spoken to so many other parents and other people that are living with ADHD, just knowing there's somebody else there who gets what you're going through, who is, you know, is there as a support mechanism, whether you need it or not right now, is reassurance to some people. That's sometimes all that's needed. And even if somebody shares a story, they'll say to me, I'm happy for you to post it in the group. So whether that, and I don't always have to give, you know, this person said that, they're just happy for me to share it so that somebody else can gain some value from it. So yeah, it's a free resource. And I do share about my coaching because I'm a life coach, as you said, and I do coach people, and I coach people pro bono on occasion, and I also do paid coaching. So there's opportunities there for me, for people to work with me on a paid basis if they choose to. But that's not the primary purpose of the group. It's about creating a community of support, of guidance, of information and education where needed. Because the book is available on Amazon now. And interestingly, somebody that we know, one of my daughter's friends whose the book is about, read the book recently. And she's purchased it, and she's joined the group. She doesn't have any children. She has no connection to ADHD, but she understood. She understood what was going on. She understood the challenges that my daughter was facing, and also myself. But her reaction was absolutely what I expected. Somebody who was interested enough to want to learn more about the condition and how it impacts people. So yeah, that's why I do what I do.
It's brilliant. I mean, just, you know, sharing reliable knowledge is so important.
Yeah.
Because as you say, there's an awful lot of information out there on the web. There are an awful lot of support groups that, as you quite rightly say, they serve a purpose. But to know that there's somewhere where we know that the information that is put out is reliable, is useful, and comes often from a very personal basis is just such a fantastic resource. So well done. And I agree with you completely. You know, ADHD is so misunderstood, and there are so many preconceptions about it and misconceptions. And you know, it is a huge challenge, and it varies. For you, what was the biggest challenge, or what do you think is the biggest challenge that's faced by parents and families, all families, living with ADHD or special needs?
Yeah, and I think I came to the realization that the biggest challenge is that it's ongoing. You know, it doesn't have an end date. It's constant, and it may change and it may vary in the severity and, you know, the kind of negative aspects of it, but it's an ongoing situation. And I was going to use the word battle or fight because that's the language that parents often use, because they're constantly fighting and battling for support or whatever it is they need for their child. But it is ongoing. It's not going to stop. The intensity will change over time, perhaps, depending on the situation, and depending on what happens with your child and, you know, how they progress in life. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I think it's also important to recognise that. So yes, it's a battle and a challenge, but it's also important to realise that a child or an individual with ADHD can also be successful.
Oh, very much so, yes. Yeah. And I love the fact that you don't use the word battle. Yeah. I know it feels like a battle, but actually what your book does is using your pillars, you break it down so that it doesn't need to be a battle. You have this very very clever way in the book of dissecting a process or providing a process which is like an anchor to parents. I feel, having read your book, that it's there, it's something secure, it's something people can keep going back to, so that it might feel like a battle, but actually there is a way in which you can make progress and see it as challenges. So I think it's great. But how do you help individuals and parents living with ADHD, other than this wonderful book?
I listen. I think that's the first chapter in the book. I think when I come across somebody who is experiencing ADHD or living with ADHD, I listen to what they have to say. That's probably, to me, one of the biggest things that you can do if you're looking to support somebody. But I'm also a coach, as I said. I'm not an ADHD coach, not yet, because I'm working on that, but I have a reasonably good understanding of ADHD. And I coach children, and often children with ADHD, they are challenged with, they lack self-esteem and self-belief. They go very negative and very inward. They lack self-confidence. They take things to heart. I mean, some of the symptoms of ADHD are really can bring a child down. And so what I do is I teach them life skills. I teach them positive mindset skills to help them to love themselves, to understand that whoever they are, how they are is great and it's fine and it's okay, and give them skills. And I help share skills with them that help them to interact and to deal with everyday life. So that's one way I work with children, helping to build their self-esteem, helping to build their resilience. With parents, I help them to understand the condition more, so that they can help their child better, understand what their child is going through. And it is a difficult balance as a parent, you know, dealing with the everyday stuff. So although they may know that actually shouting at their child is not the thing to do, in the moment, in the heat of the moment, when they've got the dinner on and they've just come home from work and the cat's running, you know, everything's happening. Yeah, those moments, you know, stuff happens and that's okay. But it's helping them to come up with strategies and think ahead and plan out what they might do. You don't always do it, but what you might do. So it's helping them to deal with the situation. Perhaps it's signposting them to other organisations that may help them. But listening is also paramount to help them to also deal with what they're dealing with, because it can be a real challenge for some parents. You know, they have all these aspirations for their child and what they hope will be. And slowly that's eroded and they realise that their child perhaps won't be the things that they had hoped for them. And so life might be different. So it's helping them to also come to terms with perhaps what's going on for them. So I help them with strategies and support and guidance and acknowledgement. And, you know, as you said, you've got the pillars there, and I kind of try and take them through those pillars to help them to cope with the condition as it is presenting itself for them. So that's what I try to do.
That's brilliant, because you know there's so much fear around ADHD, isn't there? You know, we both know that, and there doesn't need to be, with people like you to guide. So if somebody is aware of somebody who they think or they know has got ADHD or they think might be living with ADHD, how can others support them?
Yeah, that's an important one, because, you know, I said I've spoken to quite a few parents and family members don't get it. They don't believe it. People don't believe that it's a thing, that it's a real thing. And so if you're somebody who is aware that somebody you know or a family member has ADHD, I think as the first chapter in the book is to listen, is to hear what they're saying, and to listen without judgment. So that's the second thing, is not to judge the person or the child or the person that has the ADHD when you understand more about the condition. And so maybe that's the third thing, is to try and learn about or understand what the condition is and how it impacts somebody, so that you realize that the behaviors that happen, they're not behaving in that way on purpose. They can't help it. They can't regulate themselves, which is often why certain behaviors occur. To ask questions, be curious, because you're showing the person that's shared with you what's going on for them that you're interested in what's going on. And it also gives them an opportunity to offload and to talk about their situation. And that in itself is also helpful. If you don't do anything else but just listen and ask questions, you know, you're giving that person an outlet to share what's going on in their lives. And I suppose finally, it's to ask what you can do, to find out what you can do to support that person. Let them tell you. how you can support them. They may say that actually just talking to you has really helped me. But if there's more that they would like you to do and you're able to do that, then let them share with you what would work best for them. I think those would be the key things for me, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's important that it's not, you don't have to have the label, you don't have to have the diagnosis.
No.
It's about it's you know it's a varied profile for many, and it's about seeing some of the signs of it and recognizing and not going, well, you haven't got the label, so therefore you don't need to be listened to, or you don't need to help. Actually, you do.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's a fabulous resource. So when can people get their hands on it?
Hey, it's available now. It's available now. It's on Amazon. But I'm doing a Kindle launch on the 14th of July. The Kindle will be for 2 days. It will be 99p for those 2 days. So it would be great if everybody were to go out and buy it on one of those 2 days. Either the Kindle or the book would be great. And on those 2 days, if you purchase the Kindle or the book on those 2 days, I'm offering a free coaching session to go along with it as a further incentive.
Fabulous. So before you give us a final message about what you want to share with ADHD, can you remind us of your Facebook tribe, please, so that people can look that up?
Yeah, the tribe is called the ADHD Revolution. So yeah, log on there, join the group, and yeah, learn more about the condition.
And what's your final your final word about ADHD that you want to share about ADHD?
That I think I want to go back to the fact that it's a condition, and there's lots of studies that are going on, and so a lot more is known about the condition today, and there's a lot of support available. But also to remember that, you know, there are lots of people who have ADHD who are successful. And the person that always sticks in my mind is Richard Branson. When you think of, you know, he's got a billion-pound company. He is super successful. There are many sports people who have ADHD, pop stars, actors that have ADHD. And I've listed quite a few of them in the back of the book. If you look at that, you'll see that. But it's important to find the person with ADHD superpower. When they find their superpower, the sky's the limit, basically. So it's not a hindrance. Once you understand it, once you acknowledge it, and once you develop strategies for coping with it, the sky's the limit.
Brilliant. That's so lovely and positive. Thank you, Jean. I wish you every success with the book and with your tribe. It's been a real pleasure interviewing you today.
Thank you, Kate.